Madam Clerk.
She is just joining us now.
There she is.
Excellent. And there's Linda. We'll give her a chance to get in. Oh, you're here. You appeared sort of in the middle of the screen. It's good. Welcome. Okay, are we able to start, Madam CAO?
Indeed. You can go ahead.
So I'd like to call this meeting to order. Does anyone have a declaration of interest of any kind to declare? Seeing none, we'll proceed. If one does come up in the course of the meeting, I would ask you to declare at that time. You probably, item number 3, business arising, you probably heard in my inaugural speech that it was my plan to step down as chair of both the Hanover Owen Sound Task Force as well as the Affordable Housing Task Force. And I have asked certain individuals if they would be willing to step in my place, but certainly it's the wish of the committees. My wish is one thing, but the committee will ultimately determine who will take those positions. So I am, Madam Clerk, at this point going to step aside and leave the position of chair and leave it in your very good hands to carry out the election.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. So we will go to nominations for the chair of the Hanover Task Force. So I'm looking for a mover and a seconder to nominate one of our members. Mr. Warden?
Yes, Madam Clerk, I would like to nominate Brian O'Leary as chair.
Okay.
I will second that nomination.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further nominations for chair? No? Can I have a motion to close nominations, please? Councillor McQueen, thank you. Councillor O'Leary, will you accept the chair position?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to make a note. And since you were vice chair, I'm going to open nominations for the position of vice chair now. So I need somebody to move a nomination. Councillor McQueen?
You're mute, Paul.
You're muted, sorry.
I nominate the warden.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Desai, thank you. Do I have any other nominations? Warden Hicks?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Milne.
Okay.
I will second that.
Okay. Any further nominations? Can I have a motion to close nominations? Okay,
So moved.
Councillor Desai, sorry, got his hand first. Warden Hicks, are you willing to stand for vice chair?
No, I'd like to thank my nominators, but I will step aside.
Okay. Councillor Millen, are you willing to stand as vice chair, please?
Mr. Hicks is so gracious. Yes, I will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I will pass it over then to Chair O'Leary.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So let's get moving right along here. We'll go to item 3. C, I guess, with recommendations and opportunities. Randy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair O'Leary, and good morning, everyone. So based on the last meeting regarding social services, which focused on Ontario Works and United Way, we tried to capture the potential recommendations and opportunities from that discussion. And this is, for those that are joining us this morning for the first time, this is just an ongoing document that we're adding based on the conversations that we're having with various organizations, and to try to capture some of the recommendations and opportunities that have come from those discussions. So just go through and highlight based on the last discussion. So around program administration challenges, United Way noted ongoing funding challenges, including administrative funding to support programs and services. There was also significant funding concerns, especially starting this March of 2021 when the grant funding runs out. And we think that pandemic stresses are still prevalent, of course, in the community. So what are the main administrative challenges that United Way, as well as other nonprofit organizations, face? Is something that we need to look into further, given the significant shift in operations from Ontario Works and Social Services of the county. Are there resources and best practices that can be shared externally? And Anne-Marie also noted Francesca to connect with her with respect to funding needs in 2021. It was also noted that ODSP caseload is trending upward, and OW assistance for those utilizing OW assistance are needing and utilizing this form of assistance for longer periods. Local employers are experiencing work shortages, and the provincial direction is to connect people to the labor market, and the importance of continuing to partner with Y Employment Services and Y Housing, public health, for county labor market is key. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that topic later today. Ontario Works has been what's called the life stabilization and employment component of social assistance. We did hear that the employment portion is being moved to the provincial level through the Employment Services Transformation Initiative. The task force noted the need to explore the creation of one-stop shops or community hubs that provide services and information offered by whether it's the province, the county, local municipalities, as well as other organizations to avoid the need for our residents to visit multiple locations to get the services and information that they require. It was also noted that the use of technology has enhanced staff's ability to better serve OW clients, and there are greater opportunities to connect with people in need and to share critical information. And this can help shift from dependence or reliance on social services to independence. Continuing to offer refurbished phones, computers to OW clients will assist meeting client needs. And we noted that there could be an opportunity to organize a donation program for old phones, computers, and tablets. It was noted that there is a critical shortage of registered early child care educators. And again, we may hear more about this today, and the opportunity to connect with Georgian College to offer increased programs to help fill this void. There was general recognition around this. There was a lot of discussion around guaranteed income consideration. And there was general recognition from the community that the funding for Ontario Works, nonprofit organizations, and other social service programs are continuing to rise, with obviously a notable increase throughout the pandemic. And the committee, the task force, wanted to better understand whether the price to offer a guaranteed income program would be viable and how that could play out. It was noted that this type of programming would be challenging to incorporate at a county or local level and should be administered by the province. There was an article written by Hugh Siegel, who has done extensive research around the guaranteed income topic and how it rolled out provincially that could result in overall savings. United Way also noticed a decrease in food bank system users when CERB was in effect. And this is because people are interested in buying their own food if they have the option. It was noted that from a county perspective, there are potential opportunities to expand various programming, such as the RET supplement program. And we'll be hearing more about that later next week at the Affordable Housing Task Force. The county could also advocate to the province regarding the benefits of a guaranteed income. The next category of discussion was around food and transportation. And there was some discussion around the need, based on the increased cost to deliver this food during the pandemic, is there opportunities to look at the transportation network system that currently supports these food programs? It was mentioned that Habitat for Humanity has come through in great strides to support an increase in demand for the food programming through volunteering and their time and vehicles. So we just identified some further things that could be looked at in terms of, could these programs connect to county's transportation system, Are there additional public transportation networks that could support the transport of foods, as well as the new food literacy program being implemented throughout the Ontario school curriculum? And are there gaps that could be filled to educate and support community garden development, local food knowledge, etc.? There's also an ongoing need to understand the underlying reasons why clients are currently needing Ontario Works and nonprofit supports, and how to address some of those underlying challenges. So that's just a summary of the discussion, and if there's anything that we missed, we'd be happy to capture that in this document.
Okay, thank you for that, Randy. Comments or questions for Randy? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, do we need a motion to receive that report? Or no?
Chair O'Leary, just a quick question.
Councilor Desai, go ahead.
Thank you. I can't remember whether this is the last meeting or the one before that. It was the one where we had representatives from Community Drug and Alcohol Strategy. And I'm just trying to recall if we had any conversation around safe injection sites and how to proceed from there. Just to provide some background, this past Wednesday I was at my future in-laws, and my future father-in-law is a pathologist at the Owen Hospital, and he was talking about the number of opium-related deaths we've had in Grey Bruce Health Unit, and he mentioned in passing that drugs have been more deadly than COVID has in our community, and that's what got me thinking on whether we did have any discussion around the safe injection sites. And if this question is out of order right now, I do apologize. I can email and get an answer on that later.
Through you, Chair O'Leary, there was definitely discussion around that. I think it was noted that some of the services, in terms of being able to provide services in terms of where people are at, was key. It was noted that there is a need for safe supply of drugs offered through a physician, but it was noted that this must be done in a logical way, with perhaps larger centers offering this program first before smaller centers, so those in larger centers can access these supports close to them and not turn to smaller, more remote rural locations. Area doctors have also indicated that they see gaps in services filled or want to see gaps in services filled before moving on to a safe supply program. So I think that was some of the things that we've captured as part of that previous discussion, but we'd be happy to look into anything further, Councillor Desai, for sure.
Thank you very much, Randy, for that update.
Thanks for bringing that up, Akash. I had a meeting with Ian Reich at the health unit this week, and we were talking about that, the safe injections. I have a hard time relating to that, because if you think of an alcoholic and you're giving an alcoholic a certain amount to drink, I always thought that would just set them off and away they go, sort of thing. But the way he explained it is safe injections, they do work. If you give someone a certain amount 1 week and they come back and they ask for just a little bit less compared to the last one, then you know that that's one of the signs that they're looking for help, and it's an indication where somebody needs to step in and take over in the recovery side. So there are some good points to it. So any other comments or questions? Do we need a motion there, Madam Clerk?
No, we don't, Chair O'Leary. It's more just for discussion purposes.
Okay, we'll move right along then to the next item, labor markets. And Savannah, I'll let you do this introduction if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely. Sounds good, Chair O'Leary. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Lots to talk about this morning. We have Gemma here from Fort County Labor Market Planning Board. She's the Executive Director. She's going to be our very first presentation. And then we have Linda, who's the Program Director, and Susan, who's the Manager of Community Initiatives and Employment from YMCA Services to talk as well. And they're going to give you some really key, close details to what Hanover and Owen Sound economies look like and what the labor force looks like in that region. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Grey County economic development overall. So we're going to start with Gemma. So I'm going to hand it right over to you, Gemma.
Thank you, Savannah. And I'm just wondering if, is it okay for me to share my slides? Or is that something?
No, of course.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And thanks for the opportunity to be able to be a part of this meeting and to share with you. Just to confirm, you are able to see a slide that says labor markets, Owen Sound and Hanover. Great,
Yes.
thank you.
Yep.
And I think I just need to move this little picture over here. There. Okay, so we've been able to pull that information for you for Owen Sound and Hanover, and there will be a couple of things that we've added from the slides that we sent you, not in the presentation. We're keeping the presentation as we sent it to you, but we had a request for a little bit more detail, so I will be sharing that as I present. So just wanted to start with the unemployment rate, and this information does come because you requested information specifically for Hanover and Owen Sound. We had to go back to the 2016 census information, and that's the only level of information where we can get the actual unemployment rates for your particular municipalities. So having said that, the economic region's current unemployment rate as of November is 5.4%. So that's for the 4 counties of Bruce, Grey, Huron, and Perth. So the participation rates for both Hanover and Owen Sound is lower than the provincial average, as well as the employment rates, and the Owen Sound is similar to the Ontario average as it relates to the unemployment rate. And like I said, we are looking at data that is back from 2016. So we will be able to update you as the new census information comes up, probably around 2022, 23. The unemployment rate, the Stratford Bruce Peninsula so we had October, but it is November now for 5.4%. And Hanover's participation rate is highest in health occupations, trades and transportation and equipment occupations, in manufacturing and utilities. Owen Sound participation rate is highest in health occupations, natural and applied sciences, trades, transportation, and equipment operators. Still
Mr.
based on...
Chairman, if I might, I'm very sorry to interrupt, Gemma.
Yes.
I just wonder, Mr. Chairman, if I may ask, Gemma, would you like us to ask questions as you go, or do you prefer us to hold it until the end?
You can ask questions as I go along. That will be fine.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you have a question, Warden Hicks?
Well, I did. I wondered what participation rate was.
Participation rate is the available workforce in our region and the people that actually participate in that workforce. So not everyone in our population who is 15 and older participates in the labor force.
Gemma, just while we're hesitating here, can you speculate on what the employment rate is now? I mean, that's, if you're going by 2016, it's 4 years ago.
All I can say is the unemployment rate now for the region is 5.4%. And I think that employers in both Hanover and Owen Sound are similar in nature, in the fact that we have hospitality and tourism business operators. We have lots of manufacturing, and manufacturing in particular has had back to almost normal levels of operations. So we are seeing probably similar unemployment rates across our region at 5.4%, maybe a little bit higher or lower, but similar.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just encourage everyone, if you have a question, just go ahead and jump in. Thanks.
Quick question, Chair O'Leary, if I may jump in.
Sure.
Is there, going forward into the future, is there a way for County, because I know County does the surveys for the region as a whole, is there a way for them going into the future to break that down into the various population centers or various municipalities within the region, to break that data down so that we can have more localized information?
Good point. And we can do that as long as we have a reasonable number of respondents. So I think that's what we work very closely with Savannah in making sure that we can get the responses that we need from each municipality, that we are able to share the information. So certainly it can be done if we have an appropriate response rate.
Thank you for that. So, and building on that question then, I guess, if we were to have a sufficient response rate from Owen Sound and from Hanover, from the larger centers, so to speak, as opposed to the smaller, more rural municipalities, it should that. Are we in a position right now where we can get that data, or would that be something that Fort County would have to change going forward to get that sort of data?
I would say that for Hanover and Owen Sound, we should be able to collect that from the last 4 or 5 years of responses. And later on in this slide, I do have that information broken down by the last survey that we had done. And it is a low number of responses. We did combine Hanover and Owen Sound because of the response rate, but certainly moving forward, we would be happy to work with you in gathering the sufficient responses to be able to give you that information. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Chair O'Leary, could I just jump in for one quick second too before we go back? Sorry, Gemma. Slide one.
okay.
This is good. Good to have conversation right off the bat. The one thing that we find really difficult in economic development is that our best data does come from census, which is every 4+ years. So the most reliable data that we have is always old. And that's a really, really frustrating spot to be in, because we can see things happening on the ground. We can't prove it completely until the next census comes out. Yeah. So even though there are other methods and other surveys that we can do, the census data, we can't get any faster or any better than when it does come. And remind me, John, I think you said 2021, we're not doing employer one survey. Was that the plan?
That is the plan. However, if you needed it in Grey County, maybe there's something we can do to collect that. We're not doing a broad employer one. And that decision was based on the reduction in the response rates from the 2020 survey. We decided maybe give it a rest and then we'll move on in the future.
Okay.
But we can certainly facilitate that if that's something Grey County wanted to see happen. All right. So the local average of self-employed individuals is lower than the Ontario average, and particularly in Hanover at 8% compared to the province at 12%. And this also comes from the census. So all of this information, I will tell you when it's different from the census information. Yes, that's different from census. When we look at the custom tabulations that we have as a workforce planning board, occupational categories at the 1-digit level in Hanover and Owen Sound, the highest percentage of workers are found in sales and service occupations. And these occupations are based on the place of residence. So this is where people live and based on those occupations that they hold. And then continuing on that, the top sectors for the persons employed, again, place of residence, we see manufacturing, retail, and healthcare and social assistance. And those 3 sectors do make up the top 5 employment sectors across the 4-county region when we look at that in a regional capacity. Industry breakdown may be helpful when identifying recruitment and retention strategies. When you're talking about how you're going to support employers and workforce development, it's really good to know where the industry, so at the 3-digit level, NAICS or lower, you'd be able to get more details around that. Journey to work data is also important to know how many people might be staying and working in your region and how many people might be moving away. So 11% and 9% for Hanover and 19% for Hanover and Owen Sound, respectively, are commuting to a different census subdivision. So they're commuting within Grey County, but they're going outside of those 2 areas, Hanover and Owen Sound, within the county. 28% and 10% Hanover and Owen Sound respectively, are commuting outside of the census division entirely. So they're going either to Bruce, anywhere else that's surrounding your area or further. And this might be areas to focus on. Why are people leaving the region for work, and how can we retain them to work within our communities? Are good questions to ask as a committee. 12% and 11% of Hanover and Owen Sound respectively walk to work, and another 1% in each community cycle. Public transit is only used by 2% of commuters in Owen Sound, but this is a number that could be compared in future census years to see if transit initiatives are enticing more people to use public transit options. And as we talk about, this may be a good place to throw in, as we talk about workforce and transit, making sure that those two align for shifts when they start, shifts when they end, and helping people to commute back and forth to work. Commuting time is not extreme. Almost 60% of the people in both communities have a commute time that is less than 15 minutes. Again, as those commuting outside the CSD, the census subdivision entirely, we might want to focus on the 19% of people who are commuting more than 30 minutes to work. Are there opportunities to work closer to home? And these are considerations that, as we talk about, Randy mentioned earlier about working with Ontario Works and employment-bound individuals, and really looking at how we might be able to help them find work within their communities and reduce the stress of transportation as it relates to workforce.
Gemma, if I could just jump in, I'm just looking at the percentage there for the number of people that commute out of Hanover is 28% compared to Owen Sound at 10.
Yes.
But the manufacturing numbers, there's the higher number of manufacturing is in Hanover compared to Owen Sound. So is that not an odd number then for 28% of people in Hanover to commute? Isn't that going like the opposite way?
So people in Hanover are commuting outside of their census subdivision, and
right.
CD.
But they have a higher number of manufacturing compared to Owen Sound.
We didn't look at this information as it relates to the different industries. So we would have to look at this in more detail to find out if that affects the commuting patterns.
Okay.
If I can, yeah, go ahead.
No.
Go ahead, Warden Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good information here about people who journey outside of, say, Hanover, or from Hanover, journeying outside of Hanover, and from Owen Sound journeying outside of Owen Sound. Do we have data about the opposite? How many people journey into Owen Sound or into Hanover? Because we believe, at least I know that there's some stats out there that talk about the amount of jobs in the county that are in Hanover and Owen Sound, and obviously not all of those people are from Hanover or Owen Sound. Do we have that data?
We do. We have access to those data, and I can certainly follow up with Savannah on getting that to you, if that's appropriate.
Yeah, I think that would be useful to have.
Okay.
There's one number I could throw out right now that we just went through during a police meeting. I think Owen Sound's population is 21,000. It goes to 41,000 by 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And I think those numbers are from 2016.
And Brian Tashiri, I believe you may have some figures around this topic, correct?
Yeah, we've speculated. I'm glad you asked that question, Selwyn, because I was going to. But so I'm hoping Gemma, has some numbers, because we speculate over 50% of the people, over 50% of the jobs in Hanover are taken up from residents outside of Hanover. I could speak, in the municipality, for example, 55% of our staff do not live in Hanover. So we kind of think that that's across the board, but it would be really good to get some solid numbers on that.
Savannah, just a quick question for you. We will have to look back at that presentation that we made to Grey County, because we do have some of this commuting in and out data for sure that we've presented before. So we can do some more work on getting some more details around that.
Yes, definitely sounds good. And we'll make sure that we bring it back to the next meeting at the beginning of the recommendations and overview. But I'll also look for it right now, because I know I have that report. But I think the base of this conversation is the fact that both Hanover and Owen Sound play a very important role in the region, because you are both attracting and helping other communities with their employment, because you residential and those workforce bases. So that's an important finding, and that's definitely what we're seeing through this information, but I will look for that commuting pattern right now.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to just share with you some of the information from the Employer One survey, and 50% of the responses received from our combined received responses from Owen Sound and Hanover. We received a total of 160 responses from Grey County in the 2020 survey. Owen Sound and Hanover represent about 1/3 of the responses we received overall for Grey. 84% of businesses hired at least one employee in 2019. And approximately the same percentage, 85%, hired at least one employee during the previous year. However, for Grey County overall, the percentage of full-time hires were significantly lower, only at 28% than for Hanover and Owen Sound alone. So the key point here is that the majority of hires in Hanover and Owen Sound were for full-time positions, and that is significantly more so than Grey County overall. So as to Savannah's earlier point, that Owen Sound and Hanover are really key players in that economy driven in Grey County, particularly through that full-time employment. So employers overall in Grey County, approximately the same percentage, 71%, experienced a separation during the previous year. However, for Grey County overall, the percentage of separations that were quits, 38%, was significantly lower than for Hanover and Owen Sound alone. So those quits for Hanover and Owen Sound were at 59%. More separations in Hanover and Owen Sound were due to quits than is the average reported by Grey County employers based on experiences in 2019. So this could suggest that Hanover and Owen Sound businesses are having a more challenging time retaining employees. And we always look at those separations data to see what we might be able to do to both continue to train employees around the skills that they might need, but to speak with employers about that retention aspect of their workforce. So 3/4 of employers in Hanover and Owen Sound plan to hire in 2020. This was collected in January of 2020. So pre-COVID, of course, that has been significantly affected by COVID. And we know the pandemic has disrupted hiring throughout the labor market. So it's difficult to know if these predictions may have changed as a result of COVID, unless we do this again. Recruitment is increasingly moving online. Over the 6 years of Employer One, we saw an overall increase in the percentage of employers using online jobs or social media, suggesting that these continue to be important recruitment tools for the third most popular recruitment tool. And the third most popular recruitment tool is word of mouth. And just as an aside, we want to remind you of the connectedjobs.ca website is a job aggregator that is hosted by the 4 County Labor Market Planning Board. And if you're ever looking for data, labor market information on your particular municipalities, you can search that information by municipality and see the number of jobs that are being posted. These, however, are only the jobs that are posted online. It is scrubbed, so the jobs show up just once in the aggregator. Grey County overall reported a higher percentage of hard to fill positions, 64% of employers compared to Hanover and Owen Sound. Grey County also reported a higher percentage of hard to fill positions that has been hard to fill for over a year, 20% compared to 13% for just Hanover and Owen Sound. So the top reasons positions are hard to fill: lack of technical skills was reported by a significantly higher percentage of employers in Hanover and Owen Sound compared to Grey overall. And that suggests that there continues to be a disconnect between the skills of job seekers and the skills needed or that the local employers are looking for. And of course, we need to continue to build that labor pool, not enough applicants that employers are seeing coming across their desks. So Grey, 60% of employers overall are concerned about retention, and the number is less in Hanover and Owen Sound. So 50% for those in Hanover and Owen Sound. This could suggest that Hanover and Owen Sound employers are better at retaining employees than the average for the region. But 2 slides back, we did talk about those higher quit rates in Hanover and Owen Sound as well. The same 2 top retention strategies as for Grey County overall. Training opportunities is one of the top retention strategies, but is not for Grey County overall, where the 3rd most important retention strategy is employee perks. So some of the migration data, where do people come from when they move to Hanover? It's West Grey and Brockton. And so these are people physically moving from one census subdivision or one census division to another. And for people moving to Owen Sound is from Chatsworth, Toronto, South Bruce Peninsula, Georgian Bluffs, and London.
Gemma, it's Brian.
Brian.
Where did that information come from?
This migration data we would have purchased from Tax Filer Custom Tabs.
Okay, because it's interesting because we've reached out to our realtors because there's been quite a few sales in Hanover, particularly, and they're indicating a lot are coming from the GTA, Greater Horseshoe area. So I'm just wondering if those stats are being captured as well.
Once we yes, we do purchase the tax filer data on an annual basis just to keep these migration information updated. And I think we'll see some of this year with COVID, we've seen a delay in tax filing. So that information is a little bit later in coming out. And again, next year, we'll see if we're back on track with that. But we tend to purchase these data on an annual basis to keep track of the movement in and out of our region. And so I just wanted to give you a quick update on a couple of questions that Savannah had asked me. They're not in the slides, but Savannah had asked me to make sure that I mention, and that is the participation rate as it relates to age cohorts. So for Hanover, 15 to 19-year-olds are participating at a much higher rate than the Ontario average at 59%, 20 to 24-year-olds at 76.1%, and 33 to 44-year-olds at 86.3%. And Savannah, I will send you these 2 charts that we've created and pulled for you. Owen Sound similarly is these 3 are higher in Owen Sound than the provincial average. 15 to 19-year-olds at 54.3%, 29 to 24-year-olds at 20 to 24-year-olds at 83.5%.
Sorry to interrupt, Gemma, but your Zoom screen is showing up on our screen here. So
I moved the screen so I could see the other. I will stop sharing. Let me do that. Now I've lost every screen. Zoom, I have to just stop sharing. Just give me 1 second. You know, technology is something so wonderful. There it is. I can't find the screen. I apologize. I cannot find the screen to change that. So I will, you don't see that anymore? I think I've moved it. So so 20 to 24-year-olds are participating at 83.5% for Owen Sound, and 35 to 44-year-olds at 86.3%. And Savannah, the other question you asked is about the industry breakdown. So retail trade with employees for Hanover is at 64 businesses that have employees. We also have the businesses without employees, so I can share that with you as well. And the second highest is other services except public administration at 51 businesses. That's for Hanover. And Owen Sound, I just need to get my screen here. Owen Sound retail trade is at 161 businesses with employees. And their second highest businesses with employees is healthcare and social assistance at 136 businesses.
Thanks, Gemma. Yes, so the participation rate was something that we definitely wanted to focus on because we often hear, especially among youth, where they seem to be that untapped labor market that we can help to solve our labor problems, but that is just not the case in our region. Our youth are working much higher than the provincial average. So that's an important point for us when we're looking at where those opportunities exist to fill labor shortages. And then also on the employee counts, because we know that Hanover and Owen Sound have many, many more businesses than that. That was what, 111-ish in your top two sectors in Hanover and 2-ish in Owen Sound. But we know that you have thousands of businesses, which is really important when we look at self-employed versus the businesses who have employees. And that's really important to know. So when we talk about the size of our businesses, that's why we're such a different structure here in Grey County. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to my slides, but that was something that I was hoping Gemma could pull for us, and we will definitely get all of this information and all of the stats back to include in the roundup that Randy does.
Okay, any other questions for Gemma?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Gemma, thank you. Gemma, I think you said if your employer one survey, you got about 160 responses. How many potentially, if you got them all back, would you expect?
Oh, thousands, like Savannah said.
10,500.
Yes.
So I'm just, you know, you can only work with what you get, but how good is that data if you're getting 150 out of thousands?
Well, we worked out with employers so this survey is really particularly for employers with employees. So when we work out the average, the statistically significant number that we need for a sample size would be just over 100. So we did cross that, but it would be better to have more employers. And then the other thing we can do, if you're looking for very specific industries, we may want to encourage a more sector-based approach, where we're saying to certain sectors, we need X number, and those numbers may be a little bit different when we do the sample sizing for that. So certainly a lot of work that we can do, and we have had better responses. We've had over 200, almost 300 responses in the past from Grey County, and that's why we took a break. We felt that employers were getting a little bit of fatigue, and every year filling out this survey, it's great that we are talking about this and building strategies so they can see the importance of responding to those surveys in the future.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. If I could just add to that too, we have a friendly little competition among the 4 counties every year to see who gets the most response. And for all but 1 year, Grey County has won. Yeah. So that it's not saying much when we look at where our numbers have gone, because it's a tough time. In January, our businesses are survey fatigued, and coming out of COVID, we have real concerns about survey fatigue. So yes, we definitely will continue to look at ways to get this information, and we can fill it out with those one-on-one conversations we have with businesses. And Linda and Susan will be able to fill out some of that as well, because their job developers are working directly with businesses. So that's how, when we're trying to look at themes and see what the data is telling us, we're always looking at how we back that up. So it's not just one data set we're ever looking at. It's always trying to pull together that full environment. But yes, fatigue is set in.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Gemma. That was a good conversation, good information. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 5. Linda Alexander, YMCA of Owen Sound Grey Bruce Employment Services. And to committee, we'll just keep up the same thing here. If you have questions, you can just jump in and we'll do it that way, if that's okay, Linda.
Sure. Thank you very much. And Susan Seifert, our manager of employment services, we're going to actually do the presentation together, but I have the tough part, sharing my screen and making sure I get the PowerPoint up. So just a second while I do that. And please let me know if you can see the YMCA employment services.
Yes.
Yep, we're good to go.
Perfect. Okay, Sue, you can start and let me know when you want me to change the slide.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you very much for inviting us here today to share our information with your task force. I think it's an important conversation, and I'm very happy to be following Gemma's presentation, because I think that gives a good basis for us to talk about what we are seeing. So moving on to the next slide, just I'd like to give you a little bit of an overview of what we do and who the job seekers are who access our services. So we deliver Employment Ontario programs throughout the whole County of Grey. These programs are funded by the Ministry of Labour, Training and Skills Development. They're free and open to all residents of Ontario, but we do have bricks and mortar in 2 sites in Grey County, one in Hanover and one in Owen Sound. So just to give you a sense of the scope of our reach, we have around 11,000 visits to our resource centers in Hanover and Owen Sound every year. People use our computers and our resources to help in their job search. So it's pretty busy. Our doors open and close very many times in a day, at least they did prior to COVID. We provide one-on-one support to approximately 2,000 job seekers every year. And we are, of course, accountable to the province for the services that we provide. And so they want to know how we're doing. Are we actually helping the people that we're being funded to help? And so we report the status for approximately 136 people every month as they exit our services. And 7 of 10 of those job seekers we exit to employed, so they've found work. 1 out of 10 also exit to training or education. So that's 80% of job seekers who are exiting to either employed or in education and well on the way to their goals. Others, the remainders, exit either because their goals have changed. Sometimes that happens, or they've moved from the area, or we are unable to contact, which in fact could mean that they even more are employed. We just haven't been able to confirm that with them. So the profile of who our job seekers are as varied as the populations in our communities. 50% of those who access our services are male and 43% are female. This is last year's data, but it's pretty consistent year over year. So a little more males than females typically. The majority are between the ages of 20 and 54, with the greatest number of job seekers that we see being between the ages of 30 and 54, with the average age of our job seekers is 39. And this too remains fairly consistent year after year. 43% who access our service have a grade 12 or equivalent. If you want to, oh, that's also on that slide, thank you. 43% have a grade 12 or equivalent. And also the percentage of those folks who have post-secondary is slightly higher than those who have less than a grade 12. So quite a cross section of individuals who are seeking jobs.
Susan, that one 25, I think it was 25%. Can you flip backwards or no?
There?
Yeah, the 25% less than a grade 12. How would that compare to like 10 years ago? Would you know that?
That I am not sure. I do know, however, that it would remain, I think, less than the other 2 categories.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And do we know how those, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do we know how those same numbers, the education figures, do we know how they would hold up, say, with the provincial average?
I don't have those just off the top of my head, but we certainly do have those available to us. So we can provide that if you would be interested in that particular stat.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could jump in for a quick question. The percentage that's less than grade 12, does that include people who have finished grade 12 equivalent in I guess an alternative method, for example, through GEDs in adult learning, or?
No, those individuals would be counted in the 43%. So that is grade 12 or equivalent.
Okay, perfect. And the other question that I have in the same regard is, would we have the percentage of people who moved from that 25 to the 43%. I guess the percentage of people who finished the grade 12 equivalent through GED or adult learning.
You mean as part of our service?
Yeah, as part of the profile data.
That might be something that our LBS partners would have more detail on than we would.
Okay.
But this is a snapshot in time. This data is based on who was in our pool of job seekers at the end of March 2020. And so we might be able to inquire with our LBS partners about how many people are actually achieving their GED each year. That number is known. We just don't have it in this slide.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, sorry, we seem to be harping on this area because that stat, you know, the 25% having less than grade 12 seems alarming to me. And I wonder, are you going to be later on in your presentation talking about recommendations around training or educational upgrade or anything like that?
We are. That is part of where we're going later on in the presentation.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Next.
So, moving on to the source of income of individuals who access our services, we do see 34% of our job seekers report Ontario Works or ODSP as their part of income, as their source of income. And the remaining 66% either have no source of income, they're on EI, or they are working part-time or less than 20 hours per week. And they might just be looking for a full-time or a second part-time position. So we took a closer look at our Ontario Works and ODSP data for the year that ended March 31st, 2020. Assisting individuals to move off of assistance, of course, and into employment is always a goal. And at that point in time, we had exited 532 individuals for the year into that category. 62% of the 532 were exited to employment or in education or training. 28% exited as unemployed, and 11% we were either unable to connect with them to find out their status, or they were unable to work for medical or other reasons. Now, we know that assisting some individuals takes longer and may require additional supports. So they may need to access our service more than once, and they can certainly do that. We do not close our door to those who are seeking help. So for example, some of those that are reported in that 28% unemployed may have opted out of work in order to seek treatment for mental health or addiction, or even to pursue stable housing. And so dealing with those issues, we find, is critical for the success of long-term employment. If you don't deal with those things, the success is harder to achieve. So one example, yes?
Sorry, Susan, Kim, if I can. My question is about then the interaction between yourself and our social services. And as we start to, in an earlier meeting, social services spoke about the life stabilization work that they're increasingly going to be tasked with. And I guess what I'm hearing you say is that that work is really important and beneficial to your ability to be successful. Is that fair?
It's very important. And I think we have a long history of working closely with your staff, and our staff in Durham, for example, and the resource center there, our staff worked right there with Ontario Works caseworkers. So that linkage between your organization and our organization is very important, so that we can help those individuals to the very best of our ability.
Right. Okay, thank you. And so the referrals can work both ways then. You can refer back to us as well as us referring people who we feel have become more stable onto yourselves.
Absolutely. And sometimes we work in collaboration, sometimes around supports, for example. The individual needs to get somewhere, they need work boots and those kinds of things, or some training. Is it best for you to provide it? Is it best for us to provide it? Have they used up their dollars through you, in which case we might be able to help them? So we do a lot of that collaboration.
Thanks. I just think it's really important for the committee to understand how critical these on-the-ground resources are to the success of any of these initiatives. There's always a bit of a push maybe from the province or whatever. We could do more of this online. And that always gives me a lot of concern, because that's not what these folks need, or I don't believe it's going to be the most successful way to try and serve them. I don't know, Susan, if you and your colleagues would agree, but I just don't think that's where this can go.
I think in-person is very important. I mean, we have pivoted. COVID has forced us all to pivot and provide as much as we can remotely. We have learned some things that it is possible to do some things remotely that we never thought would have been possible. But I think, number one, individuals really do benefit from that one-on-one.
Yeah, thanks.
So
Mr.
just
Chairman,
one.
sorry,
Go
you
ahead.
keep getting interrupted, Susan.
That's okay.
I didn't realize there would be such active participation. Mr. Chairman, I guess the point that I'm getting at, and I know that will probably come up in the discussion that we will have throughout the course of this presentation, but I'm looking at, that whole life stabilization, and I guess I could refer that to overall wellness. And it seems to me that overall wellness has a correlation to income. And income has a correlation to your education or training. So therefore, education or training goes to overall wellness, if I'm following that sort of law school admission test logic. So with that said, I know that the why, and I'm thinking about the why and specifically around Launchpad and what we're trying to achieve there, that we know that if we can raise someone's level of experience and training and the skills that they bring to the table, that is going to impact their ability to earn, which is going to impact their overall wellness.
Yes, and in fact, our job developer in Hanover works very closely with Emily. And so we definitely are trying to use all of our resources in the community for the best interest of the client. And I think Sue has a little bit more information on that when we talk about our partnerships.
For sure. So just to finish this off, and talking about some of those life stabilization kinds of things. One example that does come to mind, and we have many examples like this, but one individual cycled through our services for about 2 years. And we have many examples of that. And it took that length of time to support that individual through the steps that they needed to take in order to manage their own personal issues. But I'm really happy to say that now that individual has been employed without interruption for the last 2 years. And they do still stay in touch with us to give us updates on how well they're doing. So it shows that when you put the time in, there can be a lot of really good successes. Okay. Helping youth to access the labor market remains definitely a priority for the province. We've talked a little bit about that. Gemma had some slides about that. There was a bit of discussion. We have a long history at the Y of working with youth. Actually, our services started as a youth employment center many years ago. And we have many connections with each of the high schools in Grey County. Over 100 youth each year access our paid pre-employment training, as well as job placement and one-on-one mentorship, coaching support that we provide for 12 months, all as part of a program to ensure that youth are successful in finding and maintaining. Retention is the key to employment. And we've also supported another 60 youth or more from previous fiscals as we follow up with them for 12 months after the exit of the program. We have a really dedicated staff team who works very hard to support youth. Because of COVID, staff have had to pivot, as I mentioned, to delivering training components entirely online. And there have been some challenges with connectivity for sure, but there are also benefits such as reaching youth in our rural areas. We're able to now have youth in one cohort that come from all areas of the county. Previous to that, we would meet with youth who were maybe in the Hanover area and pull from the surrounding area and Owen Sound, but we can now have everybody into one group, and that is a benefit. And we do continue to receive very positive feedback from the youth who take who participate in these sessions, and also from our funder, who sees us, I think, as being one of the leaders in the province for the way that we have responded to our community. I think the next slide shows just some of the partners that we work with on a regular basis in Grey County on an annual basis. And I think organizations in Grey County have a long history of collaboration. I know that for sure that we are recognized in the province for this, for the way that we work together here, and we have for many, many years. This slide captures some of our partners, and collaboration happens at all levels of service delivery, right from frontline to management. Many tables where we sit together and we plan and we work together. Some of the examples of the things that we've done, for years, we've been offering what we call Try the Trades Days in conjunction with ourselves, the counties, the Four County, the college. We've also done a number of job fairs. You're probably aware of First Time Full Time is an event that we've organized with the school boards for youth who are leaving or exiting school and going to their first full-time job rather than post-secondary. Newcomer services, partnering to bring in innovative new strategies. So we believe very strongly that continued collaboration is the key to economic growth, because together we really are better. And now I'll turn it over to Linda.
Okay. And I think that's just another example that if you're looking at the partnerships, literacy and basic skills, their staff actually, when pre-COVID, came into our offices, as did the wraparound staff from OW, because it's helpful to have that face-to-face connection. So we open our doors and regularly have any number of these community partners in our offices. And now we're doing it virtually where we can. So the next few slides, Savannah has asked us to talk about or provide some insights on what we're hearing from local employers and job seekers. And so while this isn't scientific, this is more on the ground and feedback from the employers, but it certainly backs up what the Four County labor market information provides. So what is the main issue with employers are saying? It's the skills mismatch. There are jobs without people and people without jobs. And so we are trying to look for ways to solve that. There are issues with an aging workforce. We've had recently conversations with employers that say, you know, I've got a bunch of supervisors that are in that age bracket where they're going to retire at any time. And I've got all these younger workers that may not be ready to take on that supervisory role. So help. We'll talk a little bit about that as I go through it. COVID-19 as well, you know, we can't not mention that, but everybody's well aware of some of the issues that has kind of presented. So in terms of local solutions, Employment Ontario does offer a number of options in terms of supports and solutions to that are delivered in our communities. Some of them are long-standing and some of them are new. So I'm just going to continue on with the slides and talk a little bit about some of the solutions that we have in place. So one of our local solutions is hiring incentives. Employment Ontario it has a program where we can offer hiring incentives. These are connected to the job seeker. They are based on what kind of training the person needs. So some of those OW clients that come into our services, maybe they have some skills, but the employer then has to spend more time with them to train them on the job. So we use those incentives to assist the employer to offset the cost of that supervision. You will see that the majority of employers that use our services have less than, are small employers. They have less than 50 employees. And that's kind of reflects the fact that our area has a lot of small employers. We reach about 300 employers with all our incentives between our youth programs and our adult programs. And we annually inject about $500,000 directly into the economy through the employers through these incentives. Another hiring solution is our ability to help employers with recruitment and hiring. The regional job fair is one example. That actually started with collaboration with the City of Owen Sound with the Y about 7 years ago. It was called the Owen Sound and Area Job Fair. And shortly after that, we realized how busy it was going to be. And the county came in and has really taken the lead on that in the last few years. And now it's one of the largest job fairs in our area. We are currently looking at doing a virtual job fair to see if that's feasible and if the employers are interested. We also, over the years, have done job fairs in all of the outlying areas. We've collaborated with municipalities and chambers in Hanover, Durham, Meaford, and throughout the county to offer job fairs in those communities. So that's another option for employers. And also we have individual recruitment fairs. We don't want to call them job fairs because when it's a single employer that has multiple openings, we are recruiting just for that employer. And we have hosted those in our offices, providing space for on-the-spot interviews for candidates to come in. And we're now providing that as an option for online. One of our resources that's kind of a hidden gem and is our job board. Gemma mentioned about how her aggregator pulls from it, and she definitely pulls from our job board. We have about 1,000 job postings a year, and these are all free for employers to post on. They can manage their own posting, or we can have our job developers help them with that posting. And our job board actually gets about 2,400 views each week. So we know it's busy, and we know people refer to it quite frequently when we talk about how they found their jobs. We also promote and can individually kind of highlight some jobs that are in need on our Facebook page and through our Facebook groups. Another local solution as part of our Employment Ontario suite of information, and I apologize for the amount of detail on this slide, but really Second Career was started in about 2008 after we had that bit of a recession in 2007 with all those layoffs. And it was a solution to help retrain some of those workers into jobs that were in demand. And over the years, it has evolved a bit, and right now they're looking probably at one of the biggest transformations in Second Career. They are going to look at targeting individuals that have been laid off from the jobs hardest hit because of COVID and reducing some of the hurdles so that they can get them retrained into other jobs as soon as possible. So what does that mean for us? It means laid off workers have a faster access to training and can connect to jobs that are in demand locally, and employers have increased access to trained workers. So healthcare is a particular industry. This might be one where, and we've already started seeing a trickle of some of our job seekers go through with the Second Career in its current form for those positions. And what we do is we can help the job seeker navigate that application process. And if they need any supports prior to starting the training or their work positions, we can also assist with some minor certifications like first aid CPR, or if they need specialized work shoes or boots. The other solution is Canada Ontario Job Grants, and this is actually an employer-driven grant. It is a cost-sharing one, and it depends on the size of the company. The company with 99 and fewer employees can get up to 5/6 of the training costs covered, up to a maximum of $10,000 per incumbent and $15,000 for new hires. The employers that are over 99 or over 100 can get 50% of the cost covered for the training. So employers can choose. Do they want to train one employee, 10, Up to 24 is the size of grant that we can manage. If it's higher than that, then our regional Employment Ontario service consultant will handle it. And then we will help with whatever's needed locally. So really, it's up to the employer. The employer gets to choose the training and a trainer within the guidelines. And they can upskill the staff that require it. So for example, some of the ones that we've put training through on, there's been specialized automotive diagnostic technician training, supervisory training. Remember I mentioned about those employees that are being put into those supervisory roles. We've had some recent grants to support some local employers with that. AZ training, gas tech, human resource training, forklift and working at height, train the trainers. It really depends on what the company needs that will determine what they're doing. So 82% of our employers, again, are small businesses. They're smaller employers that are accessing this grant, which I think is a very positive thing for our community. But then there are still some larger manufacturing places that are actually using the grant as well. And so we have, if you look at the diagram on the side, in the service industry sector, that could include a construction, builders, healthcare, other than hospitals. Retail section could include automotive, retail automotive, heating and cooling companies, and manufacturing is fairly straightforward, but that would be training in new technologies or maybe marketing or upskilling their human resource department. And we do still see a portion of our Canada Ontario job grants for the agricultural industry. So annually, we can put in about $220,000 in grants. The good thing about this program is there are years when we've had bigger grants and there have been grant requests that went beyond the 220,000, and we can request that of our province. And if there's slippage in another community, we have gotten grants beyond our typical budget because of that. The other thing that we are always striving to do, and part of our Employment Ontario commitment, is that we have to look at a continuous improvement model. So we're always looking for innovation. We're always looking for ways to solve issues with our employers and our local communities. And so one of the initiatives that we did is we had some of our staffs take some specialized training because of COVID, and we were able to look at a new model. It's not new in terms of concept. We always knew the employers were really important and key in training, but this model actually has the employer co-designing it. So in March, we were inundated with requests from the retail area because they were the ones that had workers that they were in need of yesterday. And so we tried to fill those positions as soon as we could, but then we also created a training with some local employers to help specialize the training. So it's not just about cover letters, resumes, and how to communicate. It's about what is needed on that job. Do they need to know how to use a handheld device of some sort? Do they need to know how to use codes? And so we actually had couple of local retailers help us design a program, and we implemented it in September, and we've had really positive feedback from both the employers and the job seekers that participated. And so we are now taking this model and going forward with it and looking at other industries like construction, and we're working closely with economic development to do that in terms of developing a training that's specific for that industry so we can get more people into those kinds of jobs. And the Sydenham campus is providing an opportunity definitely for us to be able to partner to have the space to deliver that kind of training. And we are also looking at, once we roll it out and set it up, other partnerships as well, such as Launchpad that has the actual hands-on areas in there. The other thing that's happening, sorry, is there a question? No.
If I could, Linda, can I just ask a question about your relationship with the employer? Now, you talk a lot about the training that can be offered to staff. Anecdotally, one of the things that I've heard is that when you have really small businesses, they certainly don't have an HR department. They're sole proprietors, they're entrepreneurs, that development of staff, of having the policies in place that make it a good workforce that allows people to attract and retain the staff that they need. Do you think there's work to be done in that area?
I'm glad you mentioned that. You know, putting together this presentation, it was really hard to kind of encapsulate what you would want to hear about. And we have job developers that work in Owen Sound, Hanover, and throughout Grey County. And one of their jobs is exactly that. Sometimes they are actually the HR person for those small businesses. And so we have not only gone in and filled out on their computer the Canada Ontario job grant for them, we've helped post their jobs. We actually bring them employees and say, try this person out because we think this will work for you. And we will do whatever, we can to help them because we recognize the importance of small businesses because they're the ones who are going to give somebody a chance, right? Yeah. And so definitely, and even apprenticeships, we have some small businesses that would need an apprentice because their skilled worker is aging out. So we bring those individuals in, and we had a great success story in Hanover with one of our clients whose source of income was OW, single parent. We got him into a automotive position. After 6 or 8 months, the employer signed him up as an apprentice. Now, after that, he was actually recruited by another employer, but he actually finished his apprenticeship. And there's a person who will never be back on assistance, right? And he had been on it for several years. Yeah. And so those are exactly the things we do. We work with the employer to help them with what they need. So thank you for asking that.
Well, it's just, I don't think the people who haven't been on the front line appreciate the complexity. Getting an apprentice and supporting them through that journey is no mean feat from a paperwork perspective, everything else, right? So the fact that you have those resources and expertise, and whether or not you have enough of that to do everything that you could do, I think bears some examination maybe.
And I think that's a good point too. And besides so our ministry has actually been throwing out a bunch of opportunities in the last little while. And so we are pulling together along the lines of apprenticeship. I gave Savannah a shout immediately once this new one came out regarding apprenticeships, because I think as a community and even as a larger community, we need to come together and find solutions for that because it's not simple. Right. It's not always just matching that client or person with an employer. It's more complex than that. Yeah. So we have some new initiatives coming down, and we will continue to partner because we feel strongly that that's the solution to it. And even with the construction one, we're partnering with economic development to use the facilities. We're partnering with other community organizations to ensure we have the best possible service. And literacy and basic skills is part of that, because we often hear from employers, the person can't use a tape measure. Like, that's what the construction employers are saying to us. They look great on paper. We hired them. They got on the job, and I knew within an hour that was not a good fit. So we're saying to them, let's design this training program with what you need, and let's allow the person to leave when they're ready. If they're ready in 2 days and they meet your skill match, then we'll get them to the job. If they need a week or two, then we'll have them put in there in a week or two. And so I think there's some opportunities definitely around that in the next few months. So I think that's all for that one. So then other local responses, some of you, I'm just going to highlight a couple of these things. Our staff, as soon as the issue around requiring masks came up, the questions were, well, what if somebody refuses? And how do I handle that? So our staff very quickly created some training resource, a YouTube video called Dealing with Difficult People, COVID edition. And we used that to train our own staff. And we actually have shared that out, and it's been viewed over 2,000 times. And I know it's being used across our Ys. Provincially, and it's even gone to Y Canada. We also have switched our learning to online modules for those who are able to access it. It gives them an opportunity to do some training. We assist workers with CEI applications, CRBs, CERB, and we also had our youth staff create a training module on how to speak to teens about using masks and social distancing and what that means. And that resource, again, has gone across the province. There are many communities and organizations across the province that are using that with their training. And the rest you can kind of see and read. So we are here for employers and employees, job seekers in all of Grey County, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Linda. Any questions or comments from Board members? Wow, that's a lot of
Question, Mr.
information.
Chair.
Yep, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Thank you for the presentation, Linda and Susan. But I'm wondering, because there seems to be a sense of urgency from the employers, like I need help like yesterday. I heard that a couple times through your presentation. Do you think that the expectations of some, if not all, of the employers is a little bit unrealistic? Like, you're not going to get an employee that can run the shop floor tomorrow. Like, you're going to have to put in some time here. And as frustrating as it may be, but you're going to have to put some time and resources into developing this employee to meet your expectations, because you're not going to get exactly what you want tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Like, do we need to push back on the employers a little bit and say, look, you got to lower your expectations a little bit here?
I think with the employers, our job developers are working directly with them, and that is a regular conversation. And we are looking for in a job seeker that they're motivated, reliable, and dependable. And the rest is trainable for the most part. And so that's kind of what we have to kind of continually remind employers. And when they, and our job developers get pretty good at assessing what's going to be a match. And so sometimes the employer will say, no, I've got somebody, I got this covered. And then a week later, they're calling our job developer and say, did you say you had somebody? Because mine didn't work out. And so we will send them and say, listen, this person doesn't have all the skills, but give them a chance. And that's where the hiring incentives can kind of help them offset the cost of their supervisor having to spend a little bit more time with them. We also have the same opportunities with our newcomers, and we're going to be looking at some initiatives around providing more supports with employers around the newcomers as well.
Right. I mean, the thing that really struck me was your comment that the employee doesn't know how to use a tape measure. Well, it doesn't take a week to teach somebody how to run a tape measure. So, complain back to the why that your employee that you sent me doesn't know how to run a tape measure is a little bit unfair, I think. But anyway,
and I
great
think
work you people are doing, and keep going.
Thank you. Yes.
Warden Hicks,
Chairman,
did you have a comment?
Was that for me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sorry, I thought you had a question.
I do, yes. Well, a comment,
go
first of all, excellent presentation to Linda and Susan. I would just say that my first job out of college was as a YMCA employment counselor with Say Yes, Scarborough Area Youth Employment Service. I dare say that I don't think I would qualify for the job today, because it is a far more complicated job than it used to be in the days of old. I'm showing my age here. Just following up on Councillor Milne's comment, I'm finding that, at least for me, and I'm hearing from others as well, some of the basic social skills for young employees are just missing. Things like, and I don't know how we get to that, things like you need to show up, and you need to show up on time, and you need to call in when you're not well, and you need to put away your phone, when you're at the workplace. Basic sort of social skills. Is it just me, or am I getting older and maybe I'm just paying more attention to this now? But it just strikes me that those sort of basic things seem to be more and more and more missing.
Absolutely. And that's where our program, our supports in the high schools, we meet with youth one-on-one that are referred from guidance, or we have open office hours when we were in the schools, or we go into careers classes or co-op classes and do talks about employer expectations and the fact that it's important to send a message if you're not going to show up, call if you're going to be sick, and that is what you have to do. And sometimes our youth staff are in the background helping them by saying, okay, you call the employer and then call me right back, and providing those kinds of supports. And communication is absolutely key. And that is part of our program delivery with our youth programs, that those hours of training that we spend, part of that is definitely communication. And we find that the biggest impact, and this is again a partnership with employers, is we can say that to the youth, But if the employer comes in and says, you don't call me back, you're gone. All of a sudden it's like, oh, I've got to call in when I'm sick. So we definitely use our partnerships with our employers to get that message across.
Linda, just in addition to what Brian was talking about, I think we raise our kids different today. And I often look myself in the mirror. I raised 2 boys and I didn't teach them anything in terms of building a fence or shingling a roof, or I didn't even like them cutting my grass because I just did everything. But, you know, I think it would take 15 or 20 minutes to teach them to read a tape measure. And I always go back to the farmers. I think if you ask Paul McQueen, he's got 3 or 4 boys. They were probably driving a tractor and they could build you anything they wanted by the time they were 8 years old. So it's the farmers raise their kids the same, but I don't think the rest of us do. And maybe it's our own fault the way our kids are heading out into the workforce with no experience.
Yeah, that's definitely part of what we have to be adaptable with our training with the youth, is to take all that into factors, right?
Yeah. Councillor Desai, you had a question? And then we'll move on.
Yeah, just more of a statement. I also think the culture around working and work environments has changed, right? I mean, we're focusing more on work-life balance, and we're focusing more on mental health as well. And it's not a bad thing necessarily. I'm glad, you know, that as a boomer, you've taken on the responsibility that maybe you did something wrong, tongue in cheek, of course. But you know, it's not. I don't think the youth today are necessarily less hardworking. They just have a different set of priorities, including spending more time with friends and family, including you know, focusing on their mental health and trying to set the boundaries where, you know, they're getting into the sort of, if work is not being if my work is not good for my mental health, I'm not going to dedicate as many hours to it. And I don't think that's wrong. In fact, that is healthy, and that is a direction we should move towards. You know, and I think right now what we're experiencing is probably those growing pains of moving into that direction as well. So you know, I don't think it's so much that youth aren't dedicated to work as much. It's just more that they're looking at it as from a holistic viewpoint, rather than you know, work is all that matters, and making money from that is all that matters. So I think you've done a bang up job of raising your kids, Brian, for what it's worth.
Well, that's nice to know. Okay, Mr. any other comment?
Just one comment, and it goes to what Councillor Desai is talking about. And my daughter, and I'm a boomer too. Thanks, Councillor Desai, for, you know, pointing that out. But my daughter pointed out to me, she said, you know, you boomers, you live to work. But she says, my generation, we work to live. And it's hard to get your head around that as a boomer, and, you know, in the environment that I was raised in. But there's a lot of truth to that. And I think we need to come to terms with it as you know, as a workplace, and try to work with that, but it's not easy. Do you know how to run a tape measure, Councillor Desai?
A tape measure, that's one of those things that pulls out and then you sword fight with it, right?
Right. But you probably don't know. You probably don't know what 2 feet is. You need to know what half a meter is. I know. Okay, carry on.
Oh.
All right, you two. That's enough. Okay,
Chairman,
Councilor
Mr. Chairman, I believe that no, I believe that Gemma has a comment, but just before that, my kids are educated in French, and I don't have much opportunity to practice my French, but I do when I ask them to cut the lawn, because instead of asking them to cut the lawn in French, I say maudit lawn. Sorry, a little bit of, that's again my bad humor.
That was bad. Gemma,
that was pretty bad.
Gemma, you're on mute.
I have 2 mute buttons, and so I just need to remember to do both. Thank you very much. I just wanted to talk about the fact that we do have people that are quite capable of working in our community, and just in support of what Linda was saying, but some of them need a little bit more kind of work around those soft skills. And we have a program that we deliver for manufacturing and hospitality and tourism employers called Connect to Skills. And it is a longer program. Linda talked about their program getting people into jobs maybe in a couple of weeks. Our program takes 4 weeks at minimum. We work with people on those mental health issues. We've got a lot of people that have anxiety. They really want to work, but they have things that are keeping them from the labor market. And so we work with them on an individual basis. We have them in our service for up to 12 months. And we really work with them and the employer, similar to what the Y does, just in a longer, more intensive approach, because we do recognize that there are some people that need more time and more space in that learning environment. And we've had a lot of wonderful relationships and partnerships through Grey County Ontario Works. We've had a lot of success stories, one with a woman who hadn't worked for 30 years. And the first job she tried, 6 hours, the employer said, nope, it's not going to work out. The second one, it worked out beautifully. It was just getting the right match, and she's still working at that organization. So it's really about working with people, because we do have people that are capable of working. They have things that we need to help them with, and it's just getting them along that path to be successful.
Great, thank you for that. Deputy Warden McQueen, you had a comment there?
Just a brief comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know 2 of my older boys, when they were in high school, they had the co-op program, which gave them the ability to experience, and they're both taking their apprenticeships in electrical and agriculture mechanics license. So it gave them those opportunities through the school program to get, to work with an employer and to see if that's sort of the direction that they want it to go. And I don't know, are we promoting that enough or well enough? Because that sort of gets you experienced or associated or, along with some of those skills that is part of your, what do you call it, credit program through your high school, grade 12, but it does get you out into that field. And I don't know if that's being promoted enough or not. And it doesn't necessarily have to be mechanics or electrical. It could be in the hospitality. It could be in a lot of different things, right? If there's any comments there.
I can comment on that just kind of from an outside perspective and what we've heard from some of the schools. Part of the work that we're trying to do by working with our school boards is get to our youth earlier, because when they hit high school, if they're not totally sure what they want to do, but they kind of have an idea and they start to look at all of the classes and all of the requirements that they have to take to be able to get into that college or university program or apprenticeship, they completely fill their schedules and then they miss the co-op. And not having that 5th year has really made a difference. So we've been told that we need to get to youth as early as grade 6. Because that's when you have to start deciding what your trajectory is going to be and whether you're going to be academic or applied or what types of programs you're going to take. And that's really early to try and have any sort of idea about what you're going to do. On the other side that we also want to encourage is that it's okay to come back for a 5th year. You don't have to be ready to pack up and go right after 4 years. If you need a little bit more time to either work or do co-op or do something split between work and co-op, take the time, because it's better to do that than get to college, university and realize, whoops, I made a mistake. And then you miss those opportunities. So it's something that is definitely on our radar. It is not an easy egg to crack. And certainly working with our school boards to try and figure out, what that looks like and how do we get to our youth on time.
Okay, we should get moving on here. I just wanted to real quick ask Linda, did you mention a virtual job fair? Is that actually doable?
We are actually in process with collaboration with the county looking into that. It has been done in other communities, like the bigger regional job fair definitely is a big undertaking. So we're assessing what's going to be needed and whether it's going to be, there's going to be the uptake with employers. Because certainly it's a huge technical undertaking. And so we're in the process of looking at that. But certainly one-offs, one-on-one with employers, we can do those right now.
Okay, thank you. And thanks to Linda and Susan. That's a great conversation. Appreciate it. Thank you. So let's move on to item number 6 with the economic development update. Savannah is fresh off an 8 a.m. presentation already, so she's already warmed up, ready to go. Savannah?
Perfect. And I apologize. Can you see that screen? Yep. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
I apologize to Tim and our Chair O'Leary because you just listened to most of this 2 hours ago, but lots of good content to talk about. So I wanted to take the opportunity with having Gemma and Linda and Susan able to zero in on what is really happening at the employment base. We wanted to take a step more broadly and look at what does economic development in Grey County look like, and what does the environment look like, and what are we doing to try and help the labor challenges that we're having. So we want to start off, as we do with every single one of our presentations, because this is what we find absolutely key, and both Gemma and Linda and Susan have talked about this morning. It's that collaboration and that connection, and the not wasting of resources, figuring out who has the expertise, who has what role to play, and then putting it all together. And we do that through our Economic Development and Tourism Working Group, which both organizations sit on with us, as well as every one of our member municipalities, other provincial representatives, federal representatives, community partners, Georgian College. We're all at the same table, planning together and taking action together. And that's a really big deal, because it doesn't happen like that everywhere. And because we have those good relationships and we have that understanding of roles and responsibilities and opportunities, we're able to take action a lot quicker. So that's something that I really want to reinforce. It's been working since 2015. We expanded it to include tourism in 2020. And COVID pushed us. We were at one point meeting every other week. Now we're meeting monthly. We used to only meet 6 times a year, but we really see value in meeting monthly. So we're going to continue that as we go forward. If you look at our Grey team internally in economic development, tourism, culture, we wanted to give you a little bit of a breakdown just to show you the types of expertise that we have sitting around the table. So in economic development and tourism, Steve is our manager of economic development, and he focuses very much on the investment side, making sure that we have a good solid lead on investments because they are a very quick turnaround. They come and go kind of in the blink of an eye, it seems, and really need that focus. Where Brian Plumstead, our manager of tourism, is very focused on the infrastructure side of things, pulling all of the different players together so that we can improve our tourism infrastructure that we have around the county, because COVID's shown us nothing else. It's just how attractive we are and how unprepared we are at the same time to make sure that we're serving the populations properly. We also have 3 EDOs as of 2021. We've got Philly Markowitz, who focuses on agri-food, Jacinda Rudolph, who's focused on attraction and retention, and then Allison Theodora, who will be focused on tourism. And that's coming from some staff shifts from tourism to economic development, as well as from tourism to communications. The business enterprise.
Savannah, if I could just, Savannah, if I could just
Sure.
interrupt you for a second there. I'm not sure your slides are advancing. At least
Oh.
I'm seeing made in Grey economic development. Is that?
Oh, I'm on the Grey team internal. Is everyone else, can anyone else see that or no?
No, it's not flipping.
Okay.
Sorry to
It's
interrupt.
Made in Grey economic development.
Yep, I can see your title page, but yeah.
That's weird. Oh, your screen sharing is paused. How do I unpause that? Oh, resume share.
What's Tim saying?
There we
Is that
go.
better? There we go. Okay.
Now you're cooking. Now you're cooking with gas. Right on.
I didn't
Thank
know
you.
you could pause a screen share. Well, I learned something new today. Thank you. Okay, so this is the last slide I'm talking about right now. Our Business Enterprise Center that operated in the city of Owen Sound for, I think it was 17 years. And in 2018, we brought it in-house to Grey County to help provide a larger regional approach and help businesses realize that it is okay to go after these services. They were always open to everybody right across Grey County and beyond, actually, because it's a provincial program. We can never say no to anybody. So it's always been accessible, but it just didn't come across that way. It wasn't perceived by businesses that they could access it in the same way that they can now. So we've seen a real growth in the consultant requests and in the one-on-one. I was just saying this morning that over the last year, Courtney and Taylor have had over 600 inquiries for new business startups and over 100 one-on-one, 1-hour consultations with business startups. So we are still seeing a lot of growth around entrepreneurship, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And local immigration partnership, this is brand new to both Grey and Bruce. In 2020, we received federal funding for a 3 to 5 year program, and we got that this year. And so we are now right in the heart of getting the local immigration partnership up and going. And that is very much focused on helping. It's an indirect service, so it's working with employers, with community partners, with the college. We're not able to provide services directly to newcomers. That's the partnership with YMCA. They also received funding at the same time for the same length of time to provide those direct services to our newcomers and immigrants. So between the two programs, we now have actual settlement services in all of Grey and Bruce County for the next 3 to 5 years, which is very exciting. So if you look at where we fall in the corporate strategic plan, we're under goal number 1, which is grow the Grey County economy. And our role in economic development and tourism specifically is to enhance our economy by becoming investment ready, promoting Grey County's exceptional economic assets and opportunities. And that's why our staffing and our working group is set up the way that it is, because we need all hands on deck to be able to look at that. The economy is such, we could call it a beast, because there are so many things that play in and impact and are connected. And I hope that through the conversations we've had this morning, I can't help but think back to the last couple of task force meetings that we've had with this task force in particular, and seeing how each piece has played together. And now we're seeing it play out in the labor force, and that labor force going back to each of those pieces that we've talked about over the last couple of meetings. So they're so interconnected, and it is so important that we understand how that works and what that impact really is. So this is the slide that I was mentioning when we were talking about business size. And this is a really, really important thing for us to remember. So we have about 10,500 businesses in Grey County. Those numbers are from 2019. It's the most recent we can get. We were getting those from analysts, which the province had shut down for the last year, but they've just started to reopen it. So hopefully we'll have some new information shortly. But what that tells us is that 70% of those businesses are sole proprietors and home-based businesses. So when Gemma was talking about the numbers in Hanover and Owen Sound specifically, and they seem so low in terms of the businesses that have employees, it is low because most of our businesses are sole proprietors and home-based businesses. So you have lots of business in your community, but it just, when we look at the employment side of things, it doesn't look like that. So this is really important to remember when we're talking about the size of our businesses. And that's why COVID hit us so differently in Grey County, because we are such small businesses. And when we were talking to the businesses about, what services are you going after, and what we spent so much time advocating about, was because the programs that were coming out originally from both the province and the feds were completely geared toward businesses with employees. And that was missing 70% of our businesses. So as time went on in that advocacy role, went through Western Ontario Wardens and all of the other stakeholders that we have, we started to see those programs open up, which was really, really important.
Savannah, what, if I could just jump in there,
sure.
What percentage of those 10,500 would be sole proprietor farms?
That is a great question. I do not have that in front of me, but.
Like I presume agriculture is in that number.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking a lot of times a farm business may or may not be registered as an actual business. It could be under the individual's name. And, it's some farmers don't think themselves technically as a, as a business, well, I'm a farmer, right? I'm not a businessman, I'm a farmer. But you are a businessman person, right?
Very true.
Anyway,
yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
But yes,
okay.
They would be included
Thank
in there. I'll talk to Philly and see if she does have those stats.
Good.
So it's definitely included in there. No problem. This is the slide that makes us cringe. It's the slide that I know both Gemma and Linda and Susan will also cringe around. And this is where we spend most of our time, and why we've structured ourselves and we do the programs that we do is really because of the labor force challenge. So the top right graph there that shows you that widening gap, that is the Employer One survey results over the last 5 years. And that's where we saw those numbers really start to grow. When they were at 68% of employers telling us that the ability to find workforce was fair to poor, we were really concerned. Within 2 years, when it grew to 83%, we got scared because it's not a good sign. And it very much goes back to that labor force mismatch that both YMCA and Fort County talked about this morning. And it's where we need to spend a lot of our time focusing. On the left, those two little snippets are from Gemma's reports. Once a month, we get the unemployment rate report. So one from last year, almost to the day, where we were the lowest in the province, which is something that we are continually, and it was 2.4% unemployment. And we remember coming to council saying, we don't have enough people for the jobs that we have. We're not going to have them for the jobs that are coming tomorrow. Our businesses are expanding. We have businesses coming to the region. Bruce Power is just getting going with their major component replacement, because even though that program started in 2016, the hiring only actually began in 2020. There was a lot of concern there. A month ago, we still have that same tagline where we are the lowest in the province of unemployment rate. And as Gemma said, it did drop in the last month again to 5.4%. So when we see numbers that low and we're still in the pandemic, we haven't come out on the other side of the pandemic, and we know what we look like pre-pandemic, it's really worrisome about what we're going to do to have the people to fill those labor gaps. And that's why the bottom right graph there, that's what's circled. So we talk about missing middle in terms of housing. We have a missing middle in people as well. And that's where most of our attention is going when we talk about attraction and retention. It is really that 25 to 45-year-old. That's where we're trying to focus. We are okay if our youth say, I'm going to finish school and I'm going to go away to school and I'm going to get my experience and I'm going to get my education, but we want them to come home. And in that missing middle, that's when they would come home from school. So that's where the real focus is for us. It's also where they're starting to think about having families and growing families, and rural Ontario is a very attractive place for them at that point. We see a lot of 30-year-olds who, there's a newfound desire to come home because I had my 10 years in the city, I got my experience, it's time to start a family, I want to come back. Which is why this missing middle and our housing missing middle certainly collate.
So Savannah, that excuse of our kids are growing up and leaving because there's nothing to do here, no jobs available, that excuse is gone.
Yeah, we don't like that excuse. We have some words for that excuse, but there's so much opportunity here, and it's up to us to try and reinforce that and get that out. But a piece of it is also when we look at the target, it's the parents we also need to target, because we hear quite often from parents saying, you need to go get your opportunities elsewhere. And we need to change that frame of mind.
So how do we change that perception?
We are working on it by trying to
Savannah.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Don't you think what part of what Brian's referring to, it's not the labor market, it's not about jobs. Mm-hmm. The nothing to do here is more on the social cultural side of the house, right?
Yep, absolutely. And that's why that combination of economic development and tourism matters so much, because it's the tourism side where we see that cultural impact. We see that that connection to the outdoors and to actual opportunities and things to do. So that's, a big reason why in 2020 and now going forward in 2021, we're really integrating economic development and tourism, because they need each other to create that environment.
Mr. Chair, if I could jump in here again, I wouldn't call myself an expert or by any means on demographics, but I am a student of demographics, and I love to read and see the numbers and that kind of thing. And I'm wondering, given what COVID has seemed to have done to where people want to live, is there an opportunity, and we've had some discussions around boomers here and others, but is there an opportunity for boomers, say in the large urban centers, who have had the 30-year-old children move out of the house and they've established their lives wherever? Is there an opportunity now to bring those boomers to our area for I'll say a better quality of life and a better work-life balance? Is there an opportunity there to tap that labor market or that labor pool? And that's a pretty recent phenomena, it's not a recent phenomena, but it has been exaggerated because of COVID. I'm wondering if you have any comments on that, Savannah.
Very much. We are seeing a lot of attention paid to us from cohorts. It still comes back to those economic barriers of trying to find the housing for them to be able to get here. At the same time, we know that cohort is moving here. We also know that a lot of younger populations are starting to move here. So we're very excited to see, I know through planning and looking at the growth management plans and the studies and looking at all the new numbers, we should start to see a significant shift, but definitely focusing around there. And I know specifically both Hanover and Owen Sound are working on attraction retention campaigns that complement what we're doing. So that way we're not sending the same message, we're sending complementary messages to wider audiences to try and reinforce that message that, we're here, we're a great place to be, we have opportunity for you. So definitely on the horizon and part of the 2021 work plan for sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might,
Sure.
I think Savannah's next slide is going to drive one of the points that I wanted to make, which is broadband. That shift, some people assess that shift, what do I need? I really need to be able to still operate effectively. So I think that's one of the attractions to, say, Hanover and Owen Sound, is that broadband infrastructure is in place, and it's quite good. It's a gig of service if you can afford it. But we need now to work on the rest of the county. I think as we get that infrastructure in place, people will see, I can have it all. I can have this work-life balance, but I'm especially able to do work because I've got good, dependable broadband that I can use to get work done.
Yes, you're bang on. We're very excited about Swift and what's happening, and we have seen what good, reliable, affordable internet can do in both Hanover and Owen Sound. And we need to see that happen right across the county so that we can continue to bring people here, because just like not having the housing stock, not having the broadband is also a real deterrent, because people do expect, it's not a nice to have, they expect that when they're coming here, they are going to have connectivity. And as we're seeing businesses move online, and we're encouraging businesses to move online, even our smallest businesses, as they're doing that, broadband is becoming much more difficult for them. And that's why in that last COVID impact survey that we did, broadband reared its ugly head on there because it hadn't been talked about before, because it hadn't been as big of a deal. But now that everyone is getting comfortable and realizing what's possible, it's really changed the game. So these next couple slides are just talking about, what themes we look at in terms of what Grey County Economic Development and Tourism can do to help impact and improve the environment. Because our job in economic development really is to listen to our businesses and to our residents and find out what it is they need, what it is they're missing, because that allows us to do retention. We're really good at attracting people to Grey County. We are not so great at retaining them here. And a big piece of that falls back to whether it's not finding the proper housing, not finding the proper job, not having that cultural fit and feeling really truly connected and welcome in the community. Or as Chair O'Leary had mentioned too, the not having things to do because they're just unaware. So all of those things are where we focus on. So the very first pillar is really around investment, and it's looking at bringing new dollars into the community, what we can do for wealth creation, but also that supports that employment side of things. And one of the conversations that we had this morning with Owen Sound, and it hammers it home again, is that when we're focusing, we are participating in everything we possibly can around the region. So we're working with Bruce Power for the major component replacement. We're working with TC Energy on their investment in Meaford. We're looking at all of the different opportunities, but at the end of the day, our focus is always starting on the businesses that we have here in Grey County and making sure that we are supporting them, because we know that there is a big churn in the labor market, and it is really truly a pipeline where our smaller businesses are the ones who are bringing our new people into the roles. They're getting them the training that they need. They're starting them off on the right foot, and then poof, they're gone to a larger employer because they can afford to pay more. And that is an absolute process, and it's a cycle, and it's not a bad thing. We just need to have our focus on that entry-level pipeline so that we are making sure that our employers are supported. And that's why working with Fort County and working with YMCA is so important, because we need to make sure that we are getting those people into the workforce and doing everything possible to support those employers, because they're still growing and they still need to do business. So we definitely can't forget about them. Stephanie in our offices too, through transportation and the Grey Transit route, really big in 2020 to be able to offer that. And it's very much based around employers and making sure that, people can get to work, because it's really difficult when we look at those commuter patterns and what we talked about and seeing people move in and out of different communities. Not everyone's coming with a vehicle. So if you land in a certain community, but you don't have the ability to get to the job that's perfectly suited for you in the next community, everyone's at a loss. And that's part of why transportation is such a key component to this. The community improvement plans, looking at different incentives and making sure that we're supporting the affordable, attainable housing side on the task force that we have here through the community improvement plans in every one of our municipalities. By 2021, every one of our municipalities will have their CIP in place. And that is a really good thing for us, because that means that we can put some dollars behind this as well and really show that we are committed. Tourism infrastructure, as we already talked about, making sure that we have the proper signage and washrooms and parking available so that we can help to spread people out and give them a good experience, so they realize, Grey County's ready for me and I want to be here. And we started with SWIFT and broadband. Attraction, retention, local immigration partnership, really making sure that we're focusing on the retention side and working with our employers and our organizations to be able to support new immigrants into the region. Attraction retention campaign will be very much focused around skills, trades, and healthcare, because those are right now the two areas that we need the most help in. They are the two areas that are growing the most and are suffering the most because we just don't have the people for them. And we are certainly working very closely with YMCA on both of these fronts through Sydenham to make sure that we're doing everything possible to try and actually provide the programs, but also do the attraction campaign. So the work that we're doing in partnership, that's the retention side, and the attraction side is what we can do out of market through marketing. Connected Jobs, Gemma mentioned that this morning, looking at doing some better promotion on that from our part. It was a program that we looked at doing as Grey County, but Gemma stepped up and did it for us, which is wonderful. So now we have the money to be able to put together and do the marketing behind it so that we can reinforce when we are talking to people about here are the opportunities. Here's one aggregated location that is pulling all of those opportunities together. And having the YMCA job board on there was such an important piece because it's key to our region for sure, and definitely a resource that our employers count on. So the workforce training and development, that's all part of that attraction retention campaign that we're trying to put together for 2021. Entrepreneurship is also growing strong. We talked a little bit about Business Enterprise Center already. Catapult Grey Bruce, that's a new organization, very much made up of the private sector that we are supporting at Sydenham campus so that we can start to look at the scaling of business. If COVID has taught us anything, it's that people really took a step back And this is probably having some of those impacts on our labor market because they're not going back into labor market as an employee, they're going back in as a business owner because they've taken the time to really think about what they wanted and they're choosing to operate their own businesses. So we want to support that because the more small businesses we have and the more supported they are, the more potential they become employers themselves, where they're not just a sole proprietor, they're able to start to hire employees. So very much focused on mentorship and advisorship for them, consultations and training. You know, if you look at our numbers of businesses and we see that we're around that 10,500, but 70% are those, you know, small businesses, we really are a region of entrepreneurs. That's what we are. We are in rural Ontario. We do things differently. We're scrappy. We do things for ourselves, but together at the same time. So we're always looking to fill gaps. We're always looking for ways to leverage the resources that we have around us. And that is something that we need to celebrate, and we try to celebrate and support as best we can through the Business Enterprise Center. And that all wraps back up to Sydenham campus, where we are working to pull together entrepreneurship, workforce development, and innovation. Business Enterprise Center is currently located there. Catapult Grey Bruce is located there. The Tenneco Action Center is located there as well. And that is helping to find those supports for the employees who did lose their positions and get them back into the labor market. And there are certainly opportunities available for them. So it's a really good pipeline to have. In the new year, we should also see for Barb Fisher from Community Futures Development Corporation. She should be locating to Sydenham as well. So now we have the federal side. So we'll have all three levels of government located under one roof, which is a really good thing when we're looking at that opportunity. And being right beside Georgian College and working with Georgian College to create that pipeline and to support all entrepreneurship, workforce development, and innovation. It's just, it pulls everything back together, and having them as an anchor in this region is absolutely key. So we are very much attuned to what's happening with Georgian, doing everything we possibly can to work with them to continue and help their growth. They fared very well through COVID, where they saw less than a 10% decrease in enrollments, and they were projecting much, much higher than that. So to know that our smaller rural campuses, they really do serve a need in the local market because they can move a little bit quicker, they can work directly with employers, and they're right here, which saves everyone from having to send somebody out of the region. And that has always been kind of what based our work plan and based our business plan for Sydenham campus and the partnership with Georgian, is the fact that we can start to close those loops locally, because employers cannot afford to lose people for days at a time to send them out of the region for at least 2 hours just to get to the training that they need to be able to upskill and upscale within their I guess, career trajectory. So as Linda had said, where we don't have all of the training necessarily, but we're working on it, is very true. And we're working directly with the businesses themselves to make sure that we're getting the training that they need and that can be turned around quickly so that we can continue that pipeline and we can close that loop to keep people here. So that is kind of economic development for Grey County in a nutshell. I apologize for throwing all of that information at you, but I think if we combine that with what we heard this morning, we can start to paint that picture to see what it looks like when we're trying to close those labor gaps in the area. But it is not an easy feat, and we have a lot of work ahead of us because it's a very dynamic environment. So I will leave it at that.
Okay, thanks, Savannah. Do we have any questions or comments for Savannah?
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Sure, go ahead.
We're highlighting so much that needs to get done. I mean, this is just one little area talking about labor force and economic development, but I would like to not lose sight of the need and maybe the opportunities. Sydenham campus in Owen Sound is fantastic. I'm thinking down in the Hanover area, if we could just keep in mind opportunities or potential for tertiary learning opportunities down in our neck of the woods. we're not going to get that solved in in short order. But I think we have to keep keep it on the radar, anyways.
Sorry, I totally missed that part. Selwyn, all of the work that we've been doing through Sydenham and with YMCA is all connected to Launchpad as well, because we do see both Sydenham and Launchpad as playing a network and seeing what else we can do around the region to connect to other networks so that we start to build that loop right around. So that's a good point, and apologies for missing that because I sit on that board and I know exactly where we're going with that. So yes, thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Seeing none, just before we move on, I just want to thank Randy, Gemma, Linda, Susan, and Savannah. Great presentations this morning and good conversation too. Next item is other business. Do we have any other business? Seeing none, our next meeting is December 14th, which is Monday morning already, 9:30 a.m. So we'll wish everyone a great weekend, and we need a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Councillor Milne, thank you, and Councillor Desai, second. Are there anyone opposed? That's carried. Have a good weekend, everyone. Thanks. Bye for now.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye now.
Good Monday.
Bye, everyone.